this indeed is the end of Germ as far as public lectures go. I can think of no better lecturer to present to you. Lecturing on behalf of a benefit for a very special event he and some others have been planning for the spring. So thank you all for coming out again, and Mark Passio.
I want to thank Dave and Germ Books for hosting this event. I'm going to send around flyers for the Free Your Mind conference. If you already have them, you don't need to take them, but if you're not familiar with them, please take a flyer. This is what this event is a benefit for. It's an event coming up in April that I and some other organizers who are here today have been planning. And to be quite frank, the organization hasn't really been going so well. We don't really have the funds that we need. It's probably going to have to be scaled back in terms of speakers. We have a board over there that shows what we need to raise and what we've raised so far. It also has a speaker list and what we need to actually bring the speakers for hotel and travel arrangements. Also on that table are a bunch of free documents that relate to some of the topics that are going to be discussed at the conference. They're all free for you to take. There's a mailing list here for the conference and for my website. There's some cards here. Everything is free to take. There's a donation box up here. This is for my website, for me to continue my personal work that I do there. I have a radio show that I do through the Intel Hub News Network every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. on my website. That's live every Tuesday evening at 8. And I guess with that having been said, I'm going to jump into the lecture for today, which is...
Do we get tickets for the conference?
Tickets for the conference are on sale today. Barb has the tickets for the conference, so if you want to buy tickets for the event, that will really help out as far as, having money to bring in some of the speakers as well. You can get tickets for the conference today. Thanks, Michael. Thank you. So, see Barb here if you want tickets for the conference. And I would also like to thank Barb for her support with everything that I do. Wouldn't be possible without Barb.
Yay, Barb!
The presentation today is entitled Everything I Needed to Know in Life I Learned by Watching The Wizard of Oz. I think the numbers here today attest to the fact that this is a wildly popular movie. It's iconic in people's minds. We all grew up with this movie, and I think it resonates deeply with people at a level that some of them don't recognize at a conscious level. So I'm going to try to delve into some of the deeper aspects of this movie here today. The Wizard of Oz, the book and the movie, is what is called an allegory. So for those who may not be familiar with this term, an allegory is a story, poem, or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or political one. So it is an occult allegory. The word occult, I'm sorry I put that twice. The word occult is derived from Latin. The Latin word occultare means to hide or to conceal. People think occult always has a negative meaning, and it means evil. This is not what the word occult means. Occult simply means hidden. So it means hidden, mysterious, beyond the range of ordinary knowledge or experience. That which is communicated only to the initiated. Esoteric. Esoteric means reserved for a certain group of people, and its meaning is revealed only to them, and its true meaning is held back from others who are not in the initiated circle. The Wizard of Oz contains occult ideas and philosophies from many different occult traditions, among which, but not necessarily limited to, this list. And I will be touching on several of these during the course of the presentation. Alchemy, astrology, Kabbalah, Freemasonry, Hermeticism, Rosicrucianism, Tarot, and Theosophy. So this is the gentleman who wrote the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. His name was Lyman Frank Baum, better known as L. Frank Baum. He was an American author of children's books, best known for writing The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. He wrote 13 sequels in the Oz series, plus 68 other novels, 82 short stories, over 200 poems, and many miscellaneous writings. writings. Baum was born in 1856 in Chittenango, New York. He moved to Aberdeen, South Dakota in July of 1888, published The Wonderful Wizard of Oz in 1900, and he died in 1919 at the age of 62, just shy of his 63rd birthday. Now, in my understanding of The Wizard of Oz, I knew that Baum was an occultist. It's clear to anyone that has studied the occult to any extent that this was an occult allegory. However, I did some research, for this specific presentation, and understood that he did actually practice a specific occult philosophy, and that was theosophy. So this is the symbol of theosophy. Has a whole lot of occult esoteric symbolism there, and then the saying inscribed underneath it, "There is no religion higher than truth." The main tenets of theosophy, as taught by Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, are the same tenets found in many other occult schools. Chief among these is the belief of the presence of a divine spark within every person, which, with the proper discipline and training, can lead to spiritual illumination, or what has generally been called enlightenment. And I have a very different idea of what enlightenment is than how it's generally been taught in the New Age movement and what most people think of it as. Before I continue, I just want to say I know people will probably have many questions in some of the material that I cover. Could you please hold your questions until the end? I have a lot of material to go through, and it's going to take a while to get through it. Afterward, there will be a question and answer session. If I encounter something that isn't clear, please make a note of it, and then we'll have a question and answer session at the end. Thank you. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz can be regarded as theosophical allegory, pervaded by theosophical ideas from beginning to end. The story came to Baum as an inspiration, and he accepted it with a certain awe as a gift from outside, or perhaps from deep within himself. This was written in an article about the Wonderful Wizard of Oz in American Theosophist magazine, issue number 74. Before writing The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, Baum held a job as an editor for the Aberdeen Saturday Pioneer newspaper. In 1890, Baum wrote a series of articles introducing his readers to theosophy. In one of these articles he wrote, "Among various sects so numerous in America today who find their fundamental basis in occultism, the theosophist stands preeminent both in intelligence and point of numbers. Theosophy is not a religion. Its followers are simply searchers after truth. The theosophists, in fact, are the dissatisfied with the world, dissenters from all creeds. They admit the existence of a God, but not necessarily of a personal God. To them, God is nature, and nature is God." So, here is some of Baum's own writings on occultism in general. He said, there is a strong tendency in modern novelists toward introducing some vein of mysticism or occultism into their writings. Books of this character are eagerly bought and read by the people, both in Europe and America. It shows the innate longing in our natures to unravel the mysterious, to seek some explanation, however fictitious, of the unexplainable in nature and in our daily experience. For as we advance in education, our desire for knowledge increases, and we are less satisfied to remain in ignorance of that mysterious fountainhead from which emanates all that is sublime and grand and incomprehensible in nature. About the writing of the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, Baum said, "It was pure inspiration. It came to me right out of the blue. I think that sometimes the great author has a message to get across, and he has to use the instrument at hand. I happen to be that medium, and I believe the magic key was given to me to open the doors to sympathy, understanding, joy, peace, and happiness." Again, about occultism in general, he wrote, "The appetite for our age for occultism demands to be satisfied, and while with the mediocrity of most people it will result in mere sensationalism, it will lead in many to higher, nobler, and bolder thought. Who can tell what mysteries these braver and abler intellects may unravel in future ages?" So let me just say a brief word about what this lecture is not going to be about today. This presentation is not going to be about some of the allegorical connections that someone like Bill Still has put together in his very fine work called The Secret of Oz, which I recommend people to watch. And he relates this to the economy. He relates this to the financial system that has been erected in this country and the owners of that system and the Federal Reserve System. And it's a very interesting DVD. I recommend it. But this presentation will not touch on that at all. This is going to be on the deeper philosophical and occult allegory that is contained within the Wizard of Oz. Now, what I believe Baum really intended it to be was the occult allegory that I'm going to refer to it as. I think that this information that Bill Still talks about came through in what is known as synchromysticism. Okay? To look that topic up and understand what synchromysticism is. It's basically through the creative process, ideas about what is really occurring in the real world come through in the fictional work. Baum actually intended the things that I'm going to be talking about today as we go forward. So here we go. Let's look into the magical world of the wonderful Wizard of Oz. So this is the title screen of the movie, 1939. And again, this presentation is on the movie, not the book. I will touch on things in the book, but it is going to be on the imagery from the movie. This is the introduction. For nearly 40 years, this story has given faithful service to the young in heart, and time has been powerless to put its kindly philosophy out of fashion. To those of you who have been faithful to it in return, and to the young in heart, we dedicate this picture. So this is saying that it is ultimately about the heart, what this movie is all about. It's the story of Dorothy Gale. Here she is with her dog Toto. Now, what Dorothy represents in this movie is really the soul moving through its journey in life. The dog Toto represents the hidden forces of nature that guide and direct the soul, and it represents the human intuition in particular. Dorothy is antagonized by a woman named Elmira Gulch, who wants to take her dog because it gets into her garden and she claims that it bit her. She goes to her, what are basically act as her parents, her Aunt Emily and her Uncle Henry, and try to tell her about the problems that she's having with this mean old woman. And they don't really want to hear it. They don't have time. They're working on their farm. They're not concerned with the matter of how she's basically being oppressed and this woman wants to harm and take her dog and have it put down. They kind of blow her off. She goes to some of the ranch hands to ask their opinions. Here's 3 ranch hands that work on her foster parents, I guess you could say, on their farm in Kansas. And their names are Hunk, Hickory, and Zeke. We'll meet them right now. So she goes to Hickory first. And this is foreshadowing in the movie because we'll eventually be reintroduced to these characters as Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and Cowardly Lion. And she tries to tell Hickory the story about how her dog is being oppressed. And he doesn't want to hear it either. He just says, I don't have time for this. I have things to do. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't care to even hear her out. Okay? And he just takes off. Then she tries to present the story to Hunk, and he says it's all about how she uses her mind. You're not thinking this through. If you just don't bother going even anywhere near her house on your way home, this won't happen. Toto won't get into her garden, and there'll be no problems. Okay, so he's advocating avoidance, okay, and telling her that she should just apply smarts to the situation only. Okay, so she later on we'll see how she sees Zeke. I may have not put that slide in, but Zeke basically wants her to fight the woman. Like he says, I would just basically confront her head on. So he's like saying that courage is needed. Okay, this is the story. This is the part in the film where she sings the song "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." Now this in itself is an occult connection. In occultism, and specifically in some New Age ideologies, there's this thing called the Rainbow Bridge. The Rainbow Bridge is like similar to the concept of the Stargate, or spiritual illumination. It's a paradigm shift in awareness or consciousness. Okay? So she sings a song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. This is a New Age interpretation of the Rainbow Bridge, the Stairway to Heaven, as it is often talked about, a wormhole or a stargate. It's a bridge between worlds and thinking, okay, in the way that we perceive reality. So that's what the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow is a reference to. Gulch shows up at their farm, insisting to take the dog, that she has a court order to do so. This is a rich woman in the community, very mean and arrogant, and thinks she can do whatever she wants. And she wants the dog. And this is significant because of what the dog really represents. The dog represents human creativity, human intuition, and specifically the imagination. That's what the dog represents. It is the most important faculties at the disposal of the human soul. And she wants to have it destroyed. We'll see how that connects in with the story as we go further. So Dorothy protests to this, of course. Gulch insists because of the court order she's taking the dog anyway. Eventually, her aunt and uncle force the dog into the basket, and she takes it. Now, Toto escapes from the basket as Gulch is trying to take him away. And this represents that the human spirit will not be held down. It will continuously seek to be free, no matter how it is oppressed. The human intuition and the creative aspects of the individual will not be held down, will not be suppressed forever. Okay? And this is a recurring theme. Toto escapes a few times in the movie, okay, from situations. So when Toto goes back to Dorothy's house, she realizes people will be coming after them, so she decides to run away with her dog. So she packs her bags, she runs away with Toto. The first place they come is to a charlatan, fake wizard's, fake fortune teller's home. He calls himself Professor Marvel, and he says he is acclaimed by the crowned heads of Europe. Okay? This is an important term to keep in mind. The crowned heads. Okay? So he's basically saying that he's connected to the highest level of illumination, specifically in the tradition of Kabbalah, as we'll talk about as we go forward. The crown is associated with the sphere of Keter in Kabbalah. It's the highest level of consciousness attainable in physical form. So he's making the claim that he's like an illuminate, and he's acclaimed by the luminaries of Europe. Of course, he ends up being a charlatan. He finds out information about Dorothy by looking at a picture that she has in her bag when she's not looking, and uses that to read her fortune, making him think that he knows something through his powers. You'll see up here he has a gem in his headdress, which represents the third eye, and we'll see this in the later part of the presentation when I talk about some of the symbolisms, specifically of the ruby slippers. So as Dorothy heads back to home, because she was under the impression through Professor Marvel that her aunt was sick, she encounters this huge storm blowing in the Kansas plains, a tornado. Now the tornado is also a tunnel or a bridge between worlds, between the earth and the sky, okay, or between lower consciousness and higher consciousness. So this is another symbol. The tornado is what she ultimately goes through to get to the land of Oz. So she's going through the Stargate, or the rainbow, over the Rainbow Bridge. All right, so she gets swept up in the tornado, not able to make it into the shelter, and there's more foreshadowing here where she sees Myra Gulch on her bicycle transforming into the Wicked Witch of the West, who we'll meet in a moment. The house eventually lands in the land of Oz, and then the movie becomes colorized after that. And it lands on the Wicked Witch of the East, who we'll see in a moment, and we'll explain what she represents. The first character that Dorothy encounters in this mysterious magical land that she wakes up in, and this land represents her desire to go into a higher level of consciousness, not to stay in the mundane, ordinary levels of reality. So this represents a hidden dimension within the self, okay? A higher level of awareness and consciousness that she was longing for. Now, when she gets there, she meets the goddess figure. This is Glinda, okay, the good witch. And Glinda represents the sacred feminine essence. She represents all of the powerful aspects of the goddess tradition, okay, the sacred feminine. She's like the Isis figure or the Maat figure if you look into Egyptian cosmology. So that's what Glinda represents. And she tells her that she's in the land of Oz and that her house has just landed upon the Wicked Witch of the East. And the ruby slippers are on her feet, which eventually get transferred over to Dorothy. And I'll explain what those are later in the presentation, because that involves a lot of setup to get to what those represent. The Wicked Witch of the West shows up, okay, this green, evil, vicious being, who immediately wants the power that is contained in the Witch of the East slippers. Glinda makes them go onto Dorothy's feet, okay, and tells her, make sure you stay in these. This is important. These are important because of what they represent, as we'll see in the future part of the presentation. So the witch basically tells her she may not have the power to do anything to her here in what's called Munchkin Land, with Glinda being there, but she will eventually get her and her dog as well. The famous line, I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too. Okay, so there you see Glinda after she puts the ruby slippers on Dorothy's feet and tells her, make sure that you stay in that space, so to speak. We'll get to what those represent later. She tells Dorothy that if she's ever going to make it home, she has to visit the wonderful Wizard of Oz. Okay? And he lives in the Emerald City, and it's a long journey, and she has to take the yellow brick road to get there. Now, the yellow brick road represents the path to spiritual enlightenment, the path toward illumination and higher levels of consciousness. That's why it's gold. This is the alchemical gold that the alchemists seek to create, and it leads to the light. Okay, we'll see what the Emerald City represents shortly. Dorothy is on this spiral path at the beginning. Okay? Again, the spiral is in different occult traditions as well. The spiral has been traditionally used to represent the journey from lower levels of consciousness to higher levels of consciousness, not knowing how that is going to unfold. So, you can't see every aspect of the spiral. It's not a straight line, it's a curved path. And this is a shape found in nature as well. Fibonacci sequences, fractal nature of many things found in nature. Here we see it used to represent, this is used in the Freemasonic tradition, the celestial and terrestrial pillars. This is an interpretation of those, leading to the blazing star, which represents illumination up here. Okay, and this is the initiate's path, and it's viewed as a spiral staircase, because on a spiral staircase you don't see what's in front of you, what lies at the top. It's a journey of faith, basically. You have to keep going, not knowing what the journey may bring. This is an image from the second degree tracing board of Freemasonry, which is about the human intuition, and specifically it's also about true care of the heart. Okay, and it's showing this this spiral staircase that leads into the Temple of Solomon, and we'll get to the Temple of Solomon shortly. Okay, so that's what the yellow brick road represents. Now, Dorothy herself, as we said, represents the soul on its journey toward enlightenment. And we talked about Toto being representative of human intuition. So what we're going to look at now is the tradition of tarot. Okay, I'll be jumping from tradition to tradition to explain the symbolism. So in the tradition of tarot, there are 5 suits to the cards, to the tarot deck. The tarot is called the Book of Life because these images are also allegorical. They're meant to be interpreted to understand different aspects of ourself. It is the book of self, of understanding the human psyche and soul. Okay? So Dorothy represents the suit in what is called the minor arcana, which means lesser knowledge. Okay? This is the knowledge of the aspects of the psyche. Okay, and then there's something called the major arcana, which is the suit that represents the aspects of the soul and the world and the relationship between those two things. Okay, so pentacles in the tarot tradition represents the material plane. Okay, or in other words, the element of earth. And that right there is the alchemical element called earth, the symbol of the alchemical earth. Okay? So Dorothy represents earth. All right? That represents the resources that we have to go through life and our grounding to the physical world. The understanding that the work that we need to do from a spiritual perspective is done in the physical domain. Okay? Now, in the these characters also have a connection to the major arcana. Okay? So on the major arcana, Dorothy represents the zero card, or the fool. In the modern deck, this would be the Joker card. Okay? In the modern deck, there is no major arcana. It has been removed. The fifth element about the soul's connection to the universe is removed from the modern deck of playing cards. And that should be very telling to anyone that understands what these cards really represent. They're removing the quintessence, or the fifth element. Spirit has been removed from the modern deck of cards. Okay? So the major arcana is the higher knowledge. So she represents the fool, and I think to anybody that just looks at these two images, the connections are so apparent they can't be missed. I mean, you know, here's the initiate on their journey. She has her basket, he has his. She has her flower, he has his. Okay, she has her dog, he has his. It's the intuitive journey. He is stepping over a cliff. This is a leap of faith led by his intuitive capacities. All right? On her journey down the yellow brick road, the first character she comes into contact with is the Scarecrow. And he lets her know that he wants a brain more than anything else. Because this character represents we need to conquer our ignorance if we're going to move further along in our evolutionary journey in life on this planet as a human species. So what the Scarecrow represents in the tarot tradition is the element of air. And here's the alchemical symbol of air. The suit of swords represents the mental plane, or the intellect, the intellectual capabilities of the individual. Swords are an ethereal and cutting quality. Okay? And of course, the Scarecrow wants a brain. So this is the minor arcana deck that he is connected to, suit that he is connected to. In the major arcana, he represents the Hermit card. We'll see why in just a little while. But basically, the Hermit represents the initiate at the beginning of his quest, recognizing that he is in spiritual darkness, that he doesn't really understand the true nature of the soul, that he doesn't understand the nature of the psyche, and that he wants to go off in quest of knowledge, symbolized by the illuminated lamp. He knows he's in darkness, and he has the desire for knowledge. And that is what the Scarecrow is. Knows he's in darkness, wants a brain. Okay? So that's what the initiate of any initiatory tradition really represents. And that's why she encounters him first. Second, they encounter, the Scarecrow joins up with her, of course. They encounter the Tin Man. He is rusted. Okay? So this represents a frozen heart. He wants a heart. That's what his most desired thing in life is. Because he said he was made without one. And this represents apathy. Okay, not caring. Of course, he was Hickory in the foreshadowing section. He didn't care to hear what Dorothy had to say. So, what does the Tin Man represent? Of course, they have to oil him, lubricant, get him to care, in other words, okay, to get him to move. He represents the emotional plane in the minor arcana, which is the suit of cups in the tarot tradition. This is our waters, okay, and how we carry our water. This is all about care. Okay? In the major arcana, he is, of course, the lovers. This is connected to the central pillar of the tree of life in Kabbalah, as we will see. And it represents the Sephirot on the Kabbalistic tree called Tiferet. Okay? So here's the symbol of water. and that's what the Tin Man represents on the major arcana, the lovers. Now these three go down the road some more, and they encounter the Cowardly Lion, who may be the most important character in the whole film, as we will see. He doesn't have courage. He tries to frighten them, but he's really just a big baby. She smacks him, and he starts crying. And what he wants more than anything else is courage. So in the tarot tradition, he is the suit of wands, which is fire, okay, alchemical fire. And this represents courage. It represents will. This is the plane of will, our actions. So we have the Scarecrow representing thoughts or intellect, the Tin Man representing care, okay, conscience basically, right, emotions, and the Cowardly Lion represents actions, the will center. This corresponds to the solar plexus chakra in the Vedic tradition. The plane of will is wands. And in the major arcana, of course, we see the lion on the strength card. Okay? This card is also called courage in many decks. Okay? And there's an important reversal that we'll get to later in the presentation between cards 8 and 11, which is one of the best kept secrets of occultism that I'm going to reveal here today. So he represents in the major arcana the card of strength, which is will. So here's our four characters and what they represent, and they're off to see the wizard. And now, in the tradition of Freemasonry, these characters are, actually correspond. This is the first degree tracing board of the Freemasonic tradition. This is the Temple of Solomon, allegorically depicted. And we can see there are connections to our characters. The checkerboard floor of the house of the Temple of Solomon represents the physical plane. Okay? This represents the material realm on which the work is done. Here the working tools are all on the floor of the house, as it is called in Freemasonry. This represents Dorothy, or I should say Dorothy represents it, the physical material plane. Okay? The middle pillar is the pillar of wisdom. That's what that W stands for. Okay? This is our intellectual capacities, leading to, here it is, the all-seeing eye. This means that the third eye and the prefrontal neocortex is activated in the human brain. The third eye being the human pineal gland in the center of the head. Okay? And this pillar is, the Scarecrow is connected with the middle pillar. The pillar of will, or in the Freemasonic tradition, it is known as Jacob's Ladder. The Tin Man is connected to, symbolically, the pillar of Boaz. And here's the B, and this represents beauty, because it is an internal, feminine capacity, which is what our emotions are. Okay? So the suit of cups, or water, the Tin Man, emotions, this is the emotional pillar. And of course, the emotions are connected to lunar nature, lunar qualities. Okay? And finally, the lion is associated with the pillar of Jachin. And Jachin, or the light pillar, is this pillar called strength, there represented by the S. And this is the actions that we take in the world, which ultimately leads to true enlightenment. It's not just how you feel, what you know, or how you feel about what you know. It's what you do with what you know. So this pillar represents proper moral action in the world. And of course, that's what the lion wants more than anything else. He wants guts. He wants courage. Or as he says, he wants the knife. Okay? Alright, so in the Freemasonic tradition, we see the allegory of Hiram Abiff. Hiram Abiff in this tradition represents truth, will, care, freedom, all of these powerful qualities that really need to be honed for us to make a transformation and move forward in evolutionary development in life. And the allegory in Freemasonry goes such that Hiram Abiff is murdered. He is the chief builder of the Temple of Solomon, and he is, of course, the Temple of Solomon, if you don't already understand this, is purely allegorical. It's symbolic. It represents the mind. Okay, it represents the qualities of the psyche. The left and right brain as well. It represents, as we'll come to. Okay, it is symbolic. People are insistent that this is a real building. Like what the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem is supposed to be a part of. This is ridiculous. It is a symbol. We have to understand that, become mature about understanding this as a symbol representing self. Okay? So Hiram is also a symbol, and he is killed by 3 ruffians. Here are the tools of the ruffians used to put Hiram Abiff into his coffin of darkness. This represents the current human condition. Okay? Hiram in his coffin represents what humanity is now, a sleeping race of beings that are basically entombed and imprisoned. Okay, that need to rise, they need to make this journey, this transformative journey in consciousness in order to be resurrected from this current condition that we exist in. Okay? And that's what this sprig of acacia represents here. It represents the hope of resurrection. Hiram Abiff is in his coffin. Okay? The skull and bones over the coffin, that's a very important occult symbol representing the people that really helped put him there are those who have intelligence and willpower, represented by the skull and the bones, but no heart. Okay? No true care. No conscience, in other words. Okay? And so, that dark aspect has helped to attune him. And these 3 working tools are by the what are called the ruffian workers, the workers of low consciousness, who helped to put him there also. They are Jubilah, Jubilo, and Jubilum in the Masonic tradition, and they represent the 3 villains of consciousness, which is lack of intelligence, okay, or ignorance, the lack of emotional qualities or care, which is apathy, and the lack of courage, which is cowardice. That's what these 3 ruffians and their tools represent when they kill Hiram Abiff. So this is also connected to the Wizard of Oz. It's a Freemasonic allegory as well, showing that in order to get home, these are the qualities we need to build up in ourselves so that we resurrect ourselves. Okay? In the astrological tradition, this is not my strong suit in matters of occultism. I've studied it a bit, but it is probably my weakest occult philosophy. But I will attempt to just briefly relate this to the characters as well. Here we see into the 4 quadrants, or the seasons of the year, split by the solstices and the equinoxes. Okay? This is the story of the journey of the sun, the 12 houses. Of course, that represents the Christ figure, and 12 pillars. Astrotheology, you can look on my series, and there's a whole lot of it, as well as on my radio show. Podcast section. But there are midpoints of these seasons that are the ruling houses of these seasons. Okay? And these are connected with our characters. Taurus is an air sign. It rules the other 3 air signs. And it rules the season of spring as the midpoint. This is Dorothy. It's the earth. The bull is connected with the earth. Okay? Leo is a fire sign because it's when the sun has come to its full strength in the season of summer, and the sun is represented by a lion with a raging mane representing the rays of the sun in the summer season. This is the lion's season, of course. Summer ruled by Leo, alchemical fire. Okay? The autumn season, or the fall, is when the sun is losing its strength during the course of the year. He's been stung by the venom of the scorpion. This is a water sign, okay? And that's connected with the Tin Man. And of course, the air sign Aquarius rules the winter season, and this represents the intellectual qualities of the scarecrow, and he is connected with Aquarius. So these 4 signs represent something in astrology called the Great Cross. Okay, this is called the Lesser Cross. It is also known as the Cross of St. George. Okay, the solstices and the equinoxes. This cross represents the cross of St. Andrew, or the Great Cross, is the galactic cross. This is the solar system cross, defines the seasons, the Earth's journey around the sun, and this is the galactic cross that represents the great year or the precession of the equinoxes. Okay? These are often called the angels of the corners, and they represent the four seasons, they represent the four archangels, they represent the four gospel writers, etc. Okay? And they are depicted in, and this is what our characters also represent. Okay? They represent the angels of the corners. Here, they are again depicted in the tarot tradition on the Wheel of Fortune, which represents the material plane, and specifically the cycle of suffering that we go through unless we learn the lessons that the material world offers us. The angels of the corners are again shown in the World card, which is the final card of card 21 of the major arcana on the tarot deck. And here's the angels of the corners depicted again. Of course, they're in the reverse orientations here. Okay. All right, so the Wicked Witch of the West. What does she really represent? Now, there's some setup to this to understand what she represents, and her blue monkeys as well. And to understand what she represents, we have to understand mind control. Okay? Because that's what she really represents, the forces of mind control at work in the world. She represents sorcery. Sorcery is all around us. If you're not aware of this, this is what the Free Your Mind Conference is actually all about. Hidden occult forces that are directing this world and its people, and directing them into a grave is where the human race is headed if we don't reverse our course. And a well-deserved one, I might add, if we don't develop these qualities soon. Okay? So, to understand mind control, we have to understand how human consciousness operates. And we basically have a bilaterally symmetrical brain hemisphere. The left brain functions are represented by analytical thought, logic, language, science, and math. This is the male aspect of the brain, or the yang energy. And I have associated the color red with the left brain. And indeed, left is the color red. The color red is a masculine color. It's used on stop signs. It's used to represent danger. It's used to point our attention back to the physical world. And that's what all of these things deal with. Physical reality. Now, when we dwell too much in the physical aspects of the left brain, the whole neocortex becomes severely imbalanced, as I will show you a picture of in a moment. And then we start living from what's called the R complex of the brain, the reptilian brain. All right? The right brain is the opposite qualities. It represents, it makes possible holistic thought, intuition, creativity, art, music, nurturing capacities. And as we said, that's what the dog Toto represents. Okay? And I've associated the color blue with this part of the brain. Again, this is the active left brain, representing fire. There's the alchemical fire, okay, that we've already seen. This is the feminine emotional qualities of the right brain, or yin energies. Okay? And I've associated that hemisphere of the brain with the color blue, as it does respond to that color as well. What we really need to do is reach the balance in the middle here, which is called the corpus callosum, to activate the pineal gland in the center of the head, which really makes possible all the activity up here, what's called the prefrontal neocortex, which is the true higher order thought center of the human brain, and it's the true gift of the Creator right there. Okay? So, when this part of the brain becomes imbalanced and we dwell chronically in emotions without much logical thinking, we give ourselves over. We give our power over. We consider ourselves unworthy. We fall into addictive patterns, etc. Okay? So this is the controller aspect of the brain, or the dominator aspect of the brain, and this is the slave aspect of the brain, if it becomes chronically imbalanced to either of those hemispheres. Okay? When we become chronically living in this part of the brain, we go into emotional overload, and we get ruled by what's called the limbic brain. Okay? The negative aspects of the limbic brain in particular, because there are positive sides to that part of the brain as well. Okay? But this is what a brain that is imbalanced toward either brain hemisphere looks like. So this is scientifically backed. This is not just esoteric mysticism here. This is a normally functioning neocortex as seen from underneath. Here's where the brain stem would be, and the neocortex is above. So you're looking at it from the underneath side. So I believe they call this, I'm not sure if this is called a dorsal scan, I think it's called the neocortex. It's a PET scan. And this is a brain that is healthy, functioning. It's called a brain that is in global EEG coherence, meaning that both hemispheres of the brain are firing on all cylinders. This is a brain that has become damaged toward the left brain hemisphere. The doctor that scanned this brain called it the prototypical violent brain. This is a dominator's brain. This is a person obsessed with control. Okay? And that's what their brain looks like. Like holes, like craters on the moon, like a slice of Swiss cheese. Okay? These are physically damaged people. I don't know how much plainer I can say it. Brain damaged. Okay? That's what controllers are. They're brain damaged. Now this is what the Wicked Witch of the West's brain would look like. Okay? And these are not scoops taken out of the brain. They're not holes. It's worse than that. These are electrochemically deadened areas of the neocortex. There's no neural pattern firing. Now look at where it's the most damaged, in the prefrontal cortex. Okay? Now, there's two forms of basic mind control. Two basic forms, overarching forms. You want the specifics on mind control? See my website. I cover 14 different methodologies of mind control, and there are more than that. But I go in depth into 14 methodologies of mind control. There are two basic ones. One that works upon through the right brain and binds the left brain hemisphere. And one that works through the left brain hemisphere and binds the right brain hemisphere. Because the object of the dominators of this world is to keep us in perpetual imbalance on a soul level and on a mental level. Okay? And the doorway to the spirit, to the soul, is through the mind. That's why it has to work through mind control. Alright? So religion, the word religion, this is the first big form of mind control, comes from the Latin word religare. And I get emotional about this. I don't want to hear anymore from anybody. I'm tired of hearing that this comes from the word relego in Latin, to reread. Lego. Well, is it religion or is it religion? I mean, this is simple phonetics. Religion does not mean to reread. Okay? It means, it comes from religare. Okay? In Latin. So please, this ridiculous etymology, I don't know who came up with it, but it's nonsense. This is where the word religion comes from. The word religare in Latin. Religare means to tie back, to hold back, or to bind fast. So it is a binding. Now, that's not always negative. In its real, true, original, esoteric meaning, religion meant to tie us back to true nature, to natural law, principles. So it meant to reconnect, to be bound back to the laws of nature, which I have a whole separate presentation on, and it's up on my site, on natural law and sovereignty. Okay? What religion has become is a form of mind control, and it's tying us back, holding us back from the truth. And it's a form of binding, okay? It's a form of binding or mind control that is exercised through the right brain hemisphere, through unchallenged belief or dogma. And that binds the left brain functions, which are analytical thought, logic, language, science, mathematics, etc. People who are extremely right-brained are more susceptible to buy the most ridiculous notions of religion and follow things blindly because they're not applying any logical thinking to the situation. So this is a binding upon the left brain that works through the right brain hemisphere imbalance. Chronic imbalance to the right brain hemisphere will make us susceptible to this form of mind control. This is what the Wicked Witch of the East, the right hemisphere of the brain, represents. And she's dead, according to Baum. Okay? He's basically saying, this isn't the main form of control that we need to watch out for. It still exists to a certain extent, but this is the old world order. Total control through religion. And indeed, the kings of the ancient world were priest So we're moving toward a new form of total control called the New World Order, which is government. Okay? Government comes from the Latin words gubernare, okay, also rendered as governa, governare, but V is generally not used in Latin in this sense. It is usually replaced by a B. B and V often used interchangeably. So if you look up governa in a good Latin dictionary, it will refer you to the word guberno, gubernare, the verb, which means to control. And then the second part of the word, mente, and we get the word gubernatorial election, the election of a governor from this word. Okay? And then mente means mind. So right in the word, in the etymology, and people will argue, well, you can't go back to the etymology of a word and say that's what it means today. Sure I can. This is what the word means. This is where the word came from. Okay? It means mind control right in the word. Right in the word. But people don't know the meaning of words. Okay? That's what it is. It's mind control. This is the mind control that works through the left brain hemisphere, creating dominators, people that want to control the actions of other people that they have no right to control, okay, by binding the intuitive and creative capacities of the right brain hemisphere, which is what the Wicked Witch of the West wants to do. She wants to destroy this part of the brain, which Toto represents. Okay? So the right brain functions, holistic thought, intuition, creativity, art, music, nurturing capacities. This is what this is out to destroy. And this is obvious to anybody that pays attention for 5 seconds to anything that's going on around them. Okay? So it works through the left brain and it's a binding upon the right brain. This is the so-called New World Order of total governmental control. Right? And that's who the Wicked Witch of the West represents. Of the West, the left brain hemisphere. I mean, it's so apparent once you think about this. It's funny, you know, truly amazing. So, you'll notice that the witch was colored green, but our heroes are off to a place that is also green. And we're going to see what that represents now. Okay, they're going to Emerald City. What does this represent? Well, we talked about the imbalance of the brain hemispheres. Let's talk about the balance of the brain hemispheres. Let's talk about centering oneself. When we use these brain hemispheres in conjunction with each other as they are intended to be used, because these are gifts from the Creator, okay? Something happens. These two symbols combine into this symbol called the Seal of Solomon. People may recognize it as what is known as the Star of David, okay? David allegorically was Solomon's son, okay? And this represents the male aspects of this blade, or fire, coming together with the sacred feminine chalice, or yin, aspect of the waters of the right brain. Okay? So fire and water coming together to form the temple of soul, the sun, the left brain solar aspects of consciousness, and moon, the right brain lunar aspects. Soul, Omon. Solomon, the sun and the moon together, united. And the reason it's green is because this is the balance frequency. Green is the balance frequency between the two competing or opposing frequencies. The left is red frequencies, the right are blue, the blue frequencies. Okay? In the direct middle of the visible spectrum of light are the green frequencies. This is representative, symbolically, of balance. I wouldn't just say symbolically. In the physical domain, green is balance, as we will see. In the Vedic tradition, which is an Eastern tradition from the Indus Valley, we see these chakras. The chakras are energy vortices within the body that represent different aspects of consciousness. Okay, we have the root chakra, the connection with the earth. The sacrum chakra is the desire center. The solar plexus chakra is the will center. The Anahata chakra, or the heart chakra, is green, and it is a 6-petaled flower, just like the seal of Solomon. And this is the care center. The throat chakra and the third eye chakra are the knowledge centers, and you start to go up to higher levels of awareness. The third eye represents the balance between the brain hemispheres, and the crown chakra is cosmic awareness. That is the end goal of the journey of consciousness, is to get to unity consciousness, or the crown. Okay? So the green color represents the balance of the body. This is the fourth, or the center, of the chakra system as well. And the heart is the center of the human body. It is the generator of the body, it's the pump, and care is the generative principle, because that which we really care about is what we manifest outward into the world, into our experience. Green is the center of nature. This is the color that we find all over the earth. Our earth, which was once a garden, now being transformed into basically a computer control system. Okay? But green energy is the energy of the heart. It's the energy of love. It's the energy of nature. This is why nature provides green in such abundance for us. And what do? Pave over it with black. Okay? So these are the most important foods that we can eat. Alkaline foods are deep green. Green is associated with health, with balance, with nature, with nurture, with love. Now, the negative aspects of this are the controlling aspects of society. Okay? Want us to always go into imbalance. They want us to choose red or blue, and they want us to stay in those poles, in those polarities. So, the only question that I ever ask people that believe in this nonsense, garbage, sewage, is how old are you? That's the only question I ever ask, and if that offends you, it should. It's meant to. If you believe in this garbage, how old are you? Is my only question. And that's the only thing I will ask. Because you're not an actual adult. Because you believe in this sham that went on in 2004 and even the other shams that only ever elected puppets. You don't understand the occult connections behind these things. You're probably very unread, if that's the case. Okay? So, two skull and bones men competing for the presidency. Yeah, right. You had a choice. Because the green is what's really in the middle. That's the force that's opposing, that's playing off this fake oppositional force between both sides. Okay? And the people that actually own the monetary system are really who is putting people in seeming positions of power, but you never really see the hidden elitists that really are running the show, because they are sorcerers, they are hidden occultists. And don't believe that. Believe whatever you want. I'm telling you this as fact. I'm telling you as fact, not as my belief. I worked with these people. I come from some of the occult traditions where these people in the corridors of power actually work through. And I spent 10 years of my life in the dark occult, and that's all I'm going to say about that in this presentation, but you could hear about it, I talk about it a little bit on my radio show. This isn't a belief system to me. I worked with these people for years and understand their psychology better than almost anyone. Okay? So, this is the Wicked Witch of the West again. A force that is polarizing people off against each other. And she's green. And this is why they color money green, at least here in the United States. They're trying to position it as balance, as love energy, as nature. And it's none of these things. It's a form of mind control. As a matter of fact, it's the biggest form of mind control. Mind control makes all of those other things possible. You think money isn't an integral part of religion? It's the biggest part of government. The opulence of the churches of the world, what they could do with that money instead of perpetuate the belief systems of dogma that they do, it's all about money. And it's all about them bringing that color, that frequency, into the actual paper that we carry around, because they're talismans. Okay? I won't say any more on that here, but just mention it. as we go forward in the story, two of the characters fall asleep. This represents not having the will to go forward once you start to awaken. Okay? Dorothy falls asleep. This represents not using our resources. And, you know, I see this every day. I see what people spend their money on. I'll tell you what, you can go in my wallet, there's 2 $1 bills in my wallet. And that's all the money I have in the world. I'm poor, completely poor, and I'm trying to host a conference. The response hasn't been very great. I'm not saying this to try to get any sympathy from people. People can give what they can to make this happen. What I'm saying is I think it may be an idea that's beyond its time, and it's representative of people don't really contribute resources to do something higher. They're worried about lower things, the physical aspects of things. They don't understand to get out of this mess. It's all about what's going on in the mind and the heart. That's really what it's about, and it's about courage. You know, so this event will probably be a one-time only thing. I don't think I'm going to invest the energy into this next year. But Dorothy falls asleep, representing what we do with our resources is lacking in a poppy field. Now, this, of course, represents, you know, going back to sleep through drugs as well, addiction. Okay, that's another way people fall asleep. Okay, so the poppy field also puts to sleep the lion, which is courage. Courage to continue to move on, just before they get to the Emerald City. And of course, the Emerald City, that's what that represents. The green color represents balance, which is where they're trying to get. Okay, so these 2 important aspects, it means you can still know and you can still care, but if you don't use your resources and your courage, you're done. Okay? Now, what comes to the rescue is another reference to drugs. Snow. Okay? So this may be Baum saying, don't get involved in the, don't get involved in the opium thing. That'll really put you out with a bump every now and then. It won't hurt.
Not the person for stimulant.
Exactly. Right. So, but Glinda makes the snow happen, which represents the sacred feminine force, which represents what we really have to get in touch with if we're going to understand how we should properly use our resources and take action in the physical world. So it's an interesting scene of the movie. The snow wakes them up. But unfortunately, it also rusts the Tin Man again, representing we can become jaded as well if we're not careful. So the Tin Man becomes rusted and they have to oil him again. Okay, they get to Oz. They see Mr. Charlatan here, who not only was Professor Marvel in the foreshadowing section, but he is also the gatekeeper. Okay, so he is the wizard as well. Okay, this character plays the wizard at the end. Okay, and he's also the carriage driver of the horse of a different color that they come into the city upon. Okay, so this charlatan basically plays all of these different roles, including the wizard. Now, the first place they go is to a place called Brush and Shine or something like that. I can't remember, but it represents the lodges of perfection. These are the higher initiatory traditions in which one attempts to perfect oneself in the physical world, to come as close to divine consciousness as possible. So there's restuffing the scarecrow, polishing the Tin Man, beautifying both Dorothy and the lion. That's what I would say about this. This allegorically represents what are called the lodges of perfection in different occult traditions. This is a very important scene. This would just initially seem like a whimsical musical scene. It is not. It is probably the most important scene in the movie, and this will take a bit to explain. I'm going to spend a bit of time on this. It's the coronation of the king. The Cowardly Lion is coronated, okay, by the other 3 characters. And this represents the vital and important role of courage, you know, in the whole thing. He has a song where he sings about how important courage is. If you go back and watch the movie, you'll see this scene. And this is a direct reference to the Kabbalistic tradition, as connected with the Tarot tradition. So in order to understand this, and this is what I referred to earlier, that I'm going to talk about the famous reversal, or the infamous reversal in the tarot deck. To understand it, you have to understand a little bit about the main symbol of Kabbalah, which is the Sephirotic tree of life, how that relates to the chakra system, and then how they both relate to the tradition of tarot. So this is the deep occult section before we wrap up, and I'll take a bit to explain some of this. Okay? So, in the Kabbalistic tradition, which is a occult tradition from the Middle East, we have these 10 spheres on this symbol. And this symbol is called the Tree of Life. Some Kabbalists also refer to this as the ladder to God. Okay? Because it is a ladder that is climbed from base consciousness to higher or cosmic consciousness. Okay? These spheres, or sephirot as they are called, are arranged on 3 columns. Now this is a direct connection, or I should say Freemasonry is a direct connection to these 3 paths, these 3 pillars on the Kabbalistic tree. Okay? We saw them already. Now they're reversed in the Kabbalistic tradition in their arrangement depending on which way you look at the tree, or the Temple of Solomon, because it's the same thing, as it were. This is called the path or pillar of severity. So this would be the lunar pillar on the Freemasonic tracing board. This is called the path of mercy, path or pillar of mercy. And this would be the solar pillar. So this is the internal pillar and this is the external. This is the passive, this is the active. This is the female, this is the male. Okay? The middle pillar is the synthesis between the 2. So that would be the pillar of wisdom on the tracing board. Okay? Malkut means kingdom. That's the connection of the physical world, the Muladhara chakra. Okay? Symbolized by the red frequency column. Now, these are all higher aspects of the self. Yesod, or foundation, represents the Swadhisthana chakra, or the sacrum chakra. This is the desire center of the body, equated with the genital area. Okay? It's also connected with the planet Jupiter, okay? As is the Hermit card. Okay? So this would be the scarecrow. All right? The scarecrow is desire. He wants to know. He's the initiate of the traditions, of the occult traditions, to go to higher levels of awareness. Okay? Hod, which means majesty or splendor, and Netzah, which means endurance or victory, okay, are connected with the Manipura chakra in the Vedic tradition. This is the solar plexus chakra. This is the center of will, or guts, yellow color. You know, if we don't have it, they say, are you yellow? Right? That's what this is a reference to. If you don't have guts, right? So this is a dual chakra, representing an internal capacity and an external capacity. The internal capacity, or Hod, is courage. Courage is something we need to find within ourselves. And then Netzah, or victory, is will in the physical plane, the material plane. So this is actual action, and this is courage to act. Okay? So courage and will are combined. Okay? If we combine these 3 dual chakras, you see we have 7 chakras. 1, 2, this one will be 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Da'at is not a sephirot. This is called the hidden sphere. I put it on there to represent what is considered the area that the entire tree stems from. So this would be like the soul, or the void, so to speak. Okay, from which we come. It's the realm of pure potential knowledge. Some people have called it the Akash in different Eastern traditions. So Da'at is the hidden realm of the non-physical, from which we come and from which the tree of life grows. Okay? Tiferet, beauty. This is the heart chakra, of course, as we've seen. That's the center of the tree of life. The most connections are made to it because ultimately this represents the generative principle of care. And of course that would be the Tin Man. Okay? Gebura is strength or severity. Hesed is compassion or mercy. Okay? These are different qualities of how we control ourselves. So this sphere would represent the qualities of self-control or dominion over oneself. and Hesed would represent helping others. This would be an alchemical force. This would be influence over others in the world. Okay? Not control, but influence through teaching, through compassion of others' ignorance or darkness, and wanting to help. Okay? So we put those together, and that forms the throat chakra or the Vishuddha chakra. Okay? Binah is understanding, and Chokmah is wisdom. Now this is an internal quality. Understanding is what we know. But wisdom isn't actually, we don't think of wisdom as an external quality, but it is. And this is the Sephirot that gets us the closest to God consciousness. Wisdom. Sophia. Okay? Which would represent Glinda. Okay? And Sophia, that tells us where we need to go in the first place, basically. Right? This is what we do with what we know, not just knowing it. Okay, so this is the internal capacity, and this is actually what we do with the knowledge that we have. That's what wisdom really is. So these two chakras, of course, form the third eye chakra, the Ajna chakra. Okay, these are the hemispheres of the brain as well. So this would be the right brain, and this would be the left brain when they are operating in coherence, not in states of imbalance, but in unity. When they are brought together, they activate the third eye. Okay? Keter is the crown chakra. This is unity consciousness, understanding that we are all one, understanding that as even one being suffers, all are suffering. The end. That's it. And that's the end goal of the journey. That's what enlightenment really is. Not continuing to think that we're going to keep all of the institutions that we have and be free. This is a child's view of reality. Okay? The institutions we have are based in control and need to go away. And you can say that's as radical or as extreme as you want. You're not going to be free and keep the monetary system. You're not going to be free and keep the military. You're not going to be free and keep the financial system. You're not going to be free and keep the law system. You're not going to be free and keep all of these methodologies of control. You're not going to be free and keep police. Okay? You're going to be free when you really reach that level of awareness. And there are so few people at that level of awareness that it's pathetic. Just saying it like it is, that's all. Alright, so the microcosmic tree of life. Now, we're going to connect this to the tarot tradition. The Kabbalistic tradition needs to be studied in conjunction with the tarot tradition if you're to really understand either one of them. Okay? So, if you take the cards and arrange them in the Tree of Life configuration, which I'll explain in a moment, you get this arrangement, which I've made here. Now, the first card is the Fool, and I place this at the position of Da'at, the hidden realm. The hidden is not a Sephirot, okay? It is not one of the emanations, that's what Sephirot means, emanation, on the Tree of Life. There are only 10 of those, not 11. Okay? So, this is placed at God. I placed it there and I colored it white. This represents the soul, or the spirit. This is where everything comes from. Hence, it is at the position of God and not one of the Sephirot. It is the no thing, not the physical. Okay? These other things are the qualities that are inborn into us and that we have to develop in the physical world. So these are physical emanations upon the tree. Okay? So this is the microcosm. This is the realm of the soul, or of the individual, the individuation of the soul. Okay? So this reversal, and what this scene in the movie ultimately represents, is the lion being taken from his position in the microcosmic tree on the other card, on the other tree that we talked about originally, and being brought up here to this coronation, the crown chakra, Keter, okay, on the Tree of Life. And what Baum is saying by doing that, by depicting that in the scene, is there is no higher force in the cosmos than courage. Courage is what it is all ultimately about, that we must have if we're really going to even take this journey at all. The journey to higher level of awareness takes courage to begin with. but certainly to get there and to take the proper action that is necessary to reverse the course that humanity is taking will ultimately take a whole lot of courage. And I think it's something that humanity lacks in ways we can't even begin to comprehend. And I don't know if we're going to get up there or get to the Emerald City, so to speak. I'm not very hopeful, personally, if you can't hear that in my voice, for numerous reasons. I believe we're headed into a new dark age, personally. I'm explaining this because this is what I'm tasked to explain, and for no other reason. So, as far as hope goes, you can leave that with Obama as far as I'm concerned. There's your hope. Okay, so, but that's what that coronation scene is about, and hopefully it will help people to understand why these cards are often reversed. It puzzled me for the longest time, as Barb will attest to. I didn't really come to the understanding of that until maybe a couple of years ago. So they finally get to the chamber where Oz is at. This charlatan again, who is the wizard, as we'll see, acts as the gatekeeper once again. He acts as the guard. Okay. He initially tells them they can't get in to see him, then finally lets them in. They face the wizard. We'll get to what he represents. That could be a whole other presentation. I'll just touch on that briefly. Okay, and basically he's a pompous ass. Okay, he berates them. He makes them feel unworthy. He begrudgingly agrees to help them, but only if they will bring to him the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West. Meaning, he's basically telling them, you need to take down the big controller because I'm too cowardly to do it myself, or I can't do it myself. Okay? In other words, he's a false savior. He's saying that he's the all-powerful Almighty, but he's asking for lowly people to go and, go and take down this monster for him with all of her minions at her disposal, all of her mind-controlled zombies that are at her disposal. Okay? So, they accept the task. They go out with some weapons, and they go into the haunted forest looking for the witch's castle. Here we see owls. This is depicting the surveillance state. Okay? They actually are watching, and the owl is a tremendous occult symbol. If you look at my presentation, I explained on What on Earth is Happening. I explained the symbolism of the owl. This is connected with the dark occult. Often the owl is connected with dark occultism and Satanism because it is a predatory bird that has superior night vision, meaning while in darkness it can see its prey, where its prey cannot see it in darkness. So it represents people in darkness being preyed upon by those who can see it in the dark. And they call themselves the enlightened ones, or the illuminated ones. And that is one of their main symbols, the owl, as is the illuminated torch, which we will see the witch with in a few moments. So the witch sends her blue monkeys after Dorothy and her friends, and these represent the police and military, the brainwashed, mindless hordes that are unthinking and just follow orders. And get as offended about that as you like too. Okay? Dumb people, in other words. And the occultists are only too happy to tell them how dumb they are. And I worked with those occultists, and I'm going to, in my presentation at Free Your Mind, tell you all of their, not my, but their opinions of what police and military are. And if you want to hear that, you think this presentation is extreme, and this is not going to be any of my views. I'm going to tell you all the things they told me while I was in the dark occult about what they consider their own minions, and how these are the most mocked, ridiculed, and vehemently hated people on the earth. You think they don't care about us? These people who are actually doing all these manipulations? You have no idea what they think of their so-called controllers, that they own and control. They own lock, stock, and barrel. They own their soul. Not just their mind, they own their soul. Okay? So, the witch, they finally capture Dorothy and Toto. They leave the other three in the forest. And the witch now finally goes after Dorothy's ruby slippers, which is what she really wants. Here's what they represent. This will also take a little bit of time to explain what they represent. These are connected with the alchemical tradition. Okay? So, in the philosophy of alchemy, it is asserted that all, quote, base metals or base modes of consciousness are imperfections of gold, which represents pure consciousness, and that all metals are ordained by nature to become the perfect gold of the sun. The alchemist seeks to remove from all base metals their disorderly imperfections or base characteristics to bring them to their true state of natural order and to transmute them into alchemical gold, representing the purification of body, mind, and spirit. So it's the journey from the base of the tree of life to the crown of the tree of life. It's the journey down the yellow brick road to the Emerald City, etc. These are all symbolic allegories. This symbol here in alchemy is known as the Philosopher's Stone. This is what the ruby slippers ultimately represent, as we'll see. In alchemy, silver. Now, silver is what the original slippers in Baum's book were. The director changed them to ruby because he felt that they looked better in red on the golden yellow brick road. And now this is what I will say is synchromistic. Because Baum, while intending them to mean the elixir of life, as we'll see, which is a silver color, it's the color of mercury, okay? Even closer to the original meaning of what these slippers were supposed to represent is the alchemical stone, or the stone of the philosophers. And this is a ruby color. And I think the director did this deliberately because of a decision in filming, but it actually works out synchromistically. Okay? So that's where I would say is an example of synchromysticism coming through into the allegory in the movie. Okay? So silver is one of the, quote, base metals, or imperfect consciousness. It is often used as prima materia, okay, or the starting point substance at the inception of a work. The alchemical symbol of silver is associated with the moon. Again, these are the internal qualities. Something has to be indwelling. This divine spark has to initially be indwelling for it to be nurtured and start to grow into a higher level of consciousness. As such, silver holds philosophical traits of the feminine persuasion, as well as the attributes of intuition, inner wisdom, and contemplation. And this is what will eventually guide us out of the mess we're in, and that's why the witch wants to destroy them. That's why she wants them for herself. She doesn't want to destroy them, she wants to own them. She wants no one having access to these qualities. It's the destruction of the sacred feminine is what the dominator culture represents. Okay? From the 12th century onward, alchemists referred to an agent that is necessary for this transmutation of base metals into gold. This agent had many names, but the most well-known is the Philosopher's Stone. This mysterious stone was also referred to as the philosophical powder, the elixir of life, or the quintessence. And we've already heard that term in relation to the tarot deck, the Major Arcana. The Philosopher's Stone represents man himself at the beginning of what is known as the great work, the process of self-mastery, or at the very end of it, because it's all a cyclical cycle. Okay? In general, the stone is the universal spirit representing everything that has been created, and thus it is also in the alchemist himself. This is the divine spark of the Creator. The great work of alchemical transmutation is accomplished in 3 phases. So these are the 3 phases of alchemy, 3 processes that alchemists go through. The first phase is called nigredo, or the blackening. Okay? This is a state of putrefaction, corruption, dissolution, and individuation. It represents the soul's descent into the material plane and the suffering experienced in the physical world. The second phase of the great work, or alchemical transmutation of the soul from base consciousness to unity consciousness. The second phase is called albedo, or whitening. Albedo represents the process of spiritual purification, the burnout of impurities, and the sacred feminine essence. Okay? Now, here's a picture of the Philosopher's Stone. This is taken from a Harry Potter convention. because in the first movie of Harry Potter, it was called Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And again, the witch is the sorcerer. The original name for that book is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Okay? In the United States, it was renamed the Sorcerer's Stone because I guess she thought it would sell more books that would have a slightly dark connotation. But I make a distinction between magic and sorcery. And the distinction is, which will do they serve? You know, magic will serve the greater will, cosmic consciousness. Sorcery serves the egoic will, what the sorcerer him or herself want. And the idea is, let thy will be done, not my will be done. Okay? Which is the goal of the cosmos, what the cosmos is really trying to create and nurture in consciousness. So the third stage, the third and final phase of alchemical transmutation is called rubedo. Rubedo, or redness, is symbolized by the transmutation into gold, or pure consciousness. And this is the elemental fire of the Philosopher's Stone. And again, fire is connected with courage. Okay? In this phase, the body is reduced into a quicksilver. There we have the connection back to the silver slippers in the book. A quicksilver water, okay, from which what is known as the elixir of life is made. And the elixir of life represents the awakened spirit. Okay? The Buddha mind, the Christ consciousness. Okay? This red elixir, or the perfect stone, makes spiritual energy multiply and works in healing ways in living beings. This elixir is generally considered to be the same as the Philosopher's Stone, which represents the unification of man with God, of the limited with the unlimited. And that is why they are on the yellow brick road to enlightenment. The Philosopher's Stone represents the unification of the limited with the unlimited. Dorothy is Earth. She is incarnation, the soul incarnated into the physical domain, and she is connected with the yellow brick road to the spirit, okay, through these red or ruby slippers. All right? That's what they ultimately represent, and that's why the witch wants them so much. Toto escapes from the realm of the Wicked Witch again. He gets over the drawbridge, going over a bridge again, symbolic. Okay? And this represents the intuition getting away again. Following the intuition, following the sacred feminine. Okay? Not buying into the mind control. Toto isn't fooled. Okay? He finds Dorothy's friends, and they go to the witch's castle where they beat up some guards, take their uniforms, sneak in, try to rescue her. Eventually they are cornered by the witch and her guards, and she lights her broomstick, representing the illuminated torch. And again, here we have more Illuminati symbology, okay? Because she represents the sorcerers of the world, the control freaks, and the illuminated torch is kind of like something that they put up in our face saying, we have the knowledge, we have the light, and you exist in darkness. It also, there's a positive side to it, not when it's held by a piece of trash like that, but you know, in the goddess tradition, the illuminated torch is often used to represent the light of wisdom, of Sophia, Logos Sophia, as it is known. Okay? So there's two sides to a lot of symbology, and the torch is one of them. Here it is clearly the illuminated torch of the dark occultists. And she tries to burn the scarecrow with it, or she does burn him with it. She lights his arm on fire. This represents putting forward the aspects of mind control, trying to destroy the connection to the spirit, which is the mind. Okay? Dorothy takes a bucket of water and tries to throw it on the scarecrow's arm to put it out. And of course, in doing so, she hits the witch. This water represents the elixir of life, as we saw in the previous section. Okay? It represents her enlightenment, being able to defeat the forces of darkness, finally. Okay? So, of course, she hits the witch with it, and the witch melts and does her big, dramatic I'm melting, what a world speech, and then she dissolves into nothing. I'd say this is wishful thinking. I hope I'm wrong, but they bring the broomstick back to the wizard, who still refuses to help them, essentially. This guy is clearly a fraud, okay? And we'll get to what he represents in a moment. So, he won't help them. So what happens is, the intuition again says, let's pull back the curtain and see what's really under there. And what's really under there is a man who wants to control. Because what the wizard really represents is the false gods of religion. That's what it really represents. It represents the false dogmatic gods of religion. Okay? Being used as a vehicle for control when actually they're all run by men. That's it. That's what the wizard ultimately represents. And a little dog can see through that. A little dog can pull the curtain back on that. That's how much of a fraud it is. It's a weak old man. Okay? Now, what he does to try to save face is he gives them fake representations of what they really want. Okay, so he can't give the scarecrow an actual brain, he gives him a diploma. Okay? And we know what that's worth. Bird cage on there. Okay? He gives the lion who wants courage a medal, which is what they give people in the military who, follow the international bankers' demands and fight wars on lands that they have no business in. But they get these medals for them. It's really cool. So he gives the lion that, and he gives the Tin Man a ticker heart, which can no more light the fires of his heart than could a match burn his exoskeleton there. So he's fraudulent. He's been a fraud the whole time. He was a fraud in the foreshadowing section, in the black and white section at the beginning of the movie, and he's a fraud at the end of the movie. Now, he tells everyone that he has the ability to get Dorothy home because he came in an aerial vehicle. Now, this connects with something many people are probably not really ready to hear, but I'm going to say it anyway. I do a presentation called Don't Count on Disclosure, which is about the ancient manipulation of mankind possibly by extraterrestrial species, and how they basically influenced all of our religions and basically created the divine lineage of kings, which comes down to us in the modern form as the right to rule through government, okay, and international banking systems and royal families and all the other psychopaths of the world. But he tells Dorothy and her friends, I came here in a craft, his balloon. And when I landed, the people just all worshipped me as a god, basically. And so I decided to stay and keep the game up, So think about it. I mean, you can say that's far out there, but unless you research this topic with some actual scholarship and depth, you're going to, say, okay, it's far-fetched. It's something that lies very, very far beyond where a lot of people are at. So anyway, he says, I'll break my craft out again and take you back home, but then he even admits he can't even fly this thing. Because it's been so many years, he doesn't even know how to fly the balloon when he gets up there. They tell him to come back, and he goes, I don't know how to fly this thing. I don't know how this works. Right? So what happens? Dorothy's getting ready to go with this fraud, right? And who comes to the rescue once again? Toto. Barb asked me who my favorite character in the Wizard of Oz is. It's Toto. That's who it is. Okay? Toto comes to the rescue again. He sees a cat, and he hops out of the fraud's craft, leaving him to go off wherever he's going to go on his own. And Dorothy and her friends are left in Oz. But the intuition who Dorothy follows, she gets out of the craft that she's in, getting ready to go with this fraud, this charlatan, gets out of it. Okay? And what he represents is an external savior. That's what he represents. This is what people want more than anything else. They want somebody to come and rescue them from their own ignorance, from their own apathy, and from their own laziness and cowardice. And newsflash, folks, it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen that way now or ever. So good luck with that, if that's what you think, if you're waiting for a savior. Enjoy. Anyway, what the wizard, I would be remiss if I did not put this part into this presentation. Okay? No good presentation on the occult would be complete without a reference to Aleister Crowley and the Thelemic philosophy. Okay? So, Crowley, who is one of the most influential occultists of the 20th century, initiate of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, 33rd degree Freemason, etc., 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 put out some of the deepest philosophical works called the Thelemic tradition. Thelema means will. Okay, it's all about courage, ultimately. And, I don't want people to think that I'm a Crowley follower, because I'm not. The man didn't really live what he preached. Okay? He talked the talk and didn't really walk the walk. He walked over the balance of the knife edge that a magician should walk and became a sorcerer in his life. And I don't have respect for him for that. I do have respect for the writings that he penned, or channeled. He says he channeled these through automatic writing. Okay? So, the spirit that he channeled, his main writing called the Book of the Law in 1904 was called, the book was called the Book of the Law. The spirit he channeled it through was called I Was. Okay? And he called I Was a wizard. So he was the wizard I was. Now this did not influence the book because the book was written before 1904. This is an example, I also believe, of something known as synchromysticism. Okay? Things coming through to tell a story. Now what the real wizard represents is the concept that Crowley talked about called the Holy Guardian Angel. Or what this simply represents is the connection to higher self. Okay? That's what it represents. And the shoes in the original book, the silver shoes, represent the silver cord, which is the connection to the higher self in different occult traditions. Okay? So the wizard represents this holy guardian angel, the real wizard, not the fraudulent one. That's why I use the projection of it, okay? Not the wizard as a man who represents gods of religion. Okay? So, I'm going to put here an image that Crowley drew himself. Not of I Was, who he considered his holy guardian angel, okay? But of another being who he said also channeled to him that he said was similar to I Was. And this being's name was Lam. Okay? So now, the next slide is going to have a comparison of the Wizard of Oz and Lam. You can see they're quite similar, not exact, but even have some of these same types of ridges here. The big, huge head, and you see how this looks very similar to an extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional being. So, an interesting connection. Anyway, back to the story. Dorothy and Toto, wanting to still get back to Kansas, or to go back to the physical world, which the great work could then continue to be conducted in, is helped by Galinda, the sacred feminine essence, again. Okay? And she tells Dorothy, you didn't need to really look outside of yourself. This journey was only to get you to understand that the answer was with you all along. Stop looking for a savior outside. The answer was the Philosopher's Stone, which is ultimately what you carry right here, and right here, all along. You had it within you. It was all aspects of you. Okay? And this isn't to say there is no such thing as God. It's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is we need to stop looking at this force of creation as something that is external to us, but it is something that is all around us and within us. Okay? And until we start to do that, we're going to be trapped in this idea that someone's going to come and save us from ourselves. And that, I don't think we deserve that, nor should it be that way. Otherwise, we learn nothing. Otherwise, this was all purposeless. Okay? So, the ruby slippers represent the internal qualities of the soul that one has to nurture and bring to a point of refinement so that they can save themselves. She clicks her heels together 3 times, says there's no place like home, and she's back in Kansas. She is now awakened. She was sleeping, but now she is truly awakened. She is the awakened being operating in the physical world with her intuition held closely at her chest, and she is trying to tell all of the other unenlightened people what she experienced, and they just laugh. Because they haven't experienced it themselves. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. That's what this is all ultimately about. Here's the final image of our heroes. We need to operate in the physical world, but with new eyes. We need to develop true intelligence. We need to develop true care. Most of all, we need to develop courage to act in the proper ways in the physical world. And if we do that, maybe, just maybe, we'll have a chance to reach the Emerald City. Thank you. Okay, I'll take some questions from the audience now.
What about the Munchkins?
I wanted to mention that.
Tell me about the Munchkins.
I didn't mean to mention that at the point where I had the spiral. Okay, so the spiral, you saw the Munchkins all around.
Right.
The Munchkins are the elemental forces of nature that are there to assist Dorothy, and I would definitely say they are connected with entheogenic compounds. Okay, entheogenic compounds can help us to see what higher states of consciousness are like. Then they drop us back down to the physical world where the work really needs to be done. But these are elemental forces that exist in nature, and they can also be an allegory of connection with entheogens, which are psychedelics. Anyone else? Yes.
A couple of interesting observations. Some of them are just funny, they're symbolic. But almost all the characters have some kind of pointed, like the Scarecrow has a very pointed hat. The Wicked Witch of the West obviously has a pointed hat. The Tin Man has a funnel on his head.
Right.
So they've all kind of, even Glenda has that big, so you got to think there's some other reference going on too, maybe to hybrids or ETs or some kind of different.
Yeah, the triangle in general is a basic symbol of awareness or enlightenment or knowledge. You know, you see it on the back of the dollar bill, the one eye. You know, this is why they call money the one eye.
It's also funny.
The word money, it's right in the word. Like mind control is in the word government. You know, the one eye, which represents spiritual awareness, the awakening of the pineal gland, the merging of male and female, sun and moon. Okay.
And then Dorothy also has a checkerboard.
Sure.
A checkerboard.
That's right.
Bread she wears the whole time.
Yep.
Blue and white.
That's right. Money is colored green. You know, has the one eye right on it. The word money is one eye. M-O-N is the root for one, and E-Y, eye, one eye. They're trying to tell you that's enlightenment, balance, love, energy, nature, etc. It's all a complete fabrication and mind control trick. Anyone else?
Yeah, let me go on that, because this, you say this kind of thing a lot, and I'm very confused. If you go into another language, especially a non-romantic based language, do you find that a cross-linguistic foundation?
No, only in a couple. French, you get a few of these puns come through.
Okay.
And again, this is something that I would connect with the idea of synchromysticism, where the universe trying to tell us something in this day and age through the English language. And this is why so many alchemical books were written in English. They called the English language the language of the birds, or the language of the barge, the bards. They called this the language of higher consciousness because they recognized that so many word plays and puns work out in the English language.
Yeah.
Okay, because of how consciousness would be refining itself. And people who were green, they called this green language. Okay? These are called green language word puns. Look up the term green language.
Okay.
The alchemists would say that only those who are green would be able to uncover this language, which is alchemical language. Okay? And green means you are not in the red frequencies of the left brain in balance. You're not in the blue frequencies of the right brain in balance, but balanced consciousness, and now you can see the green language. That's why it's called green language. Again, connection to the color green or the Emerald City.
So you wouldn't agree with, like, the guys in Carnatica that think that English, the sounds, the resonances, he believes in English, are almost psychotic. Remember
Yeah, reversals.
The young kid, he thinks that he did it by the vibrations, and he says it basically is like crazy.
I would say some of our language is based like that too, but I think this synchromistic green language comes through in English better than any other, and therefore I would say it is a higher level language.
Right, so you'd have an opposite philosophy okay.
They called it the language of the angels. That's why it was called angelish English. So I believe it's a higher level language than other languages.
So okay. Yeah, okay. But and yet
I've heard the idea that some of the words that we use are like reversals, and that the actual frequencies that are coming out of our mouths when we speak,
frequency, right?
yeah, could be construed as negative.
And yet, even though you think it's a higher level, it's actually associated with, I guess, in tandem, a greater amount of evil, right?
Absolutely. Because people who know the origins of these words are using them against us. I often say, I say the world is controlled through words. Terence McKenna, who was a great linguist, a great speaker, he said that the world is made of words. He went one step farther beyond just control. He said the world is made of words, and if we know the words that the world is made of, we can make of it whatever we wish. I totally concur with that because we don't understand how language influences almost everything we do. For example, I gave my lecture at Fernando's Survival Drive on natural law and sovereignty, and about how we are, our own rulers. Nobody else can really tell us what to do, represent our interests, etc. As long as we're not hurting anybody. Yet there's all these, myriad of laws trying to, basically control almost all the fine details of our life, and extort our resources from us and extort our product of our labor from us. And one of the first questions that somebody asked was, well, who do we get to represent us? Right after I was finished speaking. It was as if she didn't hear anything that was said. I said, do you want to know what the word represent means legally? Because people don't know this. They don't know what the words we speak mean. They have different connotative meanings. It means you're asking someone else to recreate you, okay? To remake you in their image. So as soon as you ask for a representative in the law system, man's law system, right, you're considered legally insane by any judge who understands the admiralty system that is set up.
Yeah.
You are considered an insane human being because you've asked somebody else, excuse me, can you please create me in your image and likeness? Thank you. That's what you've asked for. And that makes you an insane person. Nobody represents me. I present me. That's it. There is no one else that can represent my interests. Yes.
I just realized that from what you're saying that there's maybe a sense of insanity in the work that I do because I'm tend to be a TSR or telephone sales representative, as they refer to it as, and that almost seems to tell something in itself that they're attempting to have people represent something or someone.
They put you through a lot of training to represent their interests. That's what somebody who's working in a corporate capacity is being asked to do. Represent the interests of this company by putting out its pitch. Yes.
Yeah, I was asking about the what was the term you used? Was it Ma'at? M-A-A-T?
Yes. Ma'at was the mother of cosmic nature and justice in the Egyptian cosmology.
And you're putting that between the third eye and the throat chakra.
I'm putting that up right next to Keter, the crown chakra.
Are you putting it above the third eye?
Well, it is one of the third eye centers. I'm associating that with the goddess, the high priestess, on the major arcana, which is card number 2.
Because I found it interesting if you put it where I thought you were putting it, below the third eye and above the throat chakra. 4 of our 6 senses are right there.
Right.
Sight, hearing, smell. And
the world card is what you're talking about. Yeah,
right.
I put that there because that represents the hidden sphere of Da'at, which is again not one of the emanations
it's
on the
D-A-A-T, is that?
D-A-A-T or D-A-A-T-H.
Okay.
How people spell it. How they transliterate it in English. Yes.
2-part question.
Yes.
One is, okay, so the Wicked Witch of the West was trying to get the slippers, silver ruby slippers.
Yep.
But the Wicked Witch of the East, her sister, already had them. Were dropped on. Okay.
Right.
And does Glenda have a particular affiliation with another polarity? That's question one. Question two is, where is the sacred masculine aspect of how this factors in?
Yes, okay. The slippers are already on the witches of the East feet, representing the old world order, had already taken the right brain captive, okay, and ruled through that way, through the giving over of one's sovereignty through belief, through dogma, right? So Galinda, the sacred feminine, okay, is the spirit of freedom. And that's embodied in this country, and it's embodied in all of these occult traditions.
But not
in the positive.
She's not in any way related to any polarity.
I would say she's the sacred feminine.
She's a good witch of the
No.
north, isn't
Yeah.
she?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But the south is never...
Yeah. This isn't really. I would say that this is connected to the season of the sun. Okay, the sun favors the northern hemisphere during the seasons that the sun is above the equator, and these are the spring and summer. So I would say this connects with astrology a little bit. So she's the goddess of the north, of the light. Okay, she's not. The southern hemisphere is called the non-favor season, or the season where the sun is in its death throes toward the winter solstice, the season of the year that things don't grow. Okay, food doesn't really grow. We have to plant in these two seasons, above the equinoxes. Okay? But the transitional phase between the world orders is where we're really in. Okay? It's saying, while the old world order has largely died, okay, the new world order is on the rise. So while we've gotten the slippers off of the old witch of the East, religious control, which was largely in the Eastern Hemisphere, coming over from, the Middle East and Europe, kings and royalty, to now the control is really being directed from the Western Hemisphere, right here, American policing the world, militarizing the world, the whole Western civilization coming closer and closer to this idea of world government or totally centrally controlled dictatorship. And what Galinda is, I believe, saying is we need to take that power and keep it, as the people, and not hand it over to government, not hand it over back to religion. So it's in this transition between the two, and what Baum was saying is that the West, the government, and the control freak Western civilization wants that control to build their new world order.
Now,
The dark new world order. Now, these occult traditions that I listed, and others, you have to understand, they are all dualistic. You can't say that this is completely good, or this is completely bad. There are perversions. Occultists take original ideas from ancient cult systems of practice and philosophy and twist them to use them to their own aims. So don't think for a minute there's no such thing as dark theosophists. Don't think for a minute there's no such thing as dark Freemasons. Don't think for a minute there's no such thing as dark Kabbalists, because there are all of those things. And I've worked with some of these people. Right. Again, these traditions have a good side and a bad side to them. I've tried to highlight the good sides of them.
So going back to